Well, I'm excited now to introduce our next guest, Grace Gao. Grace is the daughter of Gao Zhisheng, a Chinese human rights lawyer who has endured immense hardships at the hand of the Chinese government, including imprisonment and torture. He has built an impressive career as a human rights lawyer who boldly took on cases that other lawyers shied away from. He defended the Falun Gong practitioners, the house church leaders, and others. And for his work, he became a target of the Chinese government. In 2006, Gao was convicted of subversion and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was again imprisoned in December of 2011 for supposedly violating the conditions of his suspended 3-year sentence. He was released from prison in August 7th of 2014, but kept under house arrest until August of 2017. Since then, his exact whereabouts have been unknown, and no updates have been made available from the government. It's been 4 years since he has been in touch with his family, and since Grace has been able to hear or see him. And Grace has become a vocal advocate for her father and for others who were wrongly imprisoned in China. She has addressed the UN Human Rights Council, the Oslo Freedom Forum, and it is an honor for us today to have Grace join us for a discussion. Another courageous young woman. Please welcome Grace Gao. Grace, thank you so much for being with us today, and to kind of set the stage for our conversation. I mean, I just briefly touched on it, but share the story of your father and what took place.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for having me here. Thank you, Tony. So, as you might all know, my father, Gao Zhisheng, first of all, I would say he is a very devoted Christian. And then I would say he is also a human rights lawyer. He regularly took on cases that involving, persecution of religious minorities, including an official house church in China, as well as persecutions of Falun Gong practitioners. And that's how he became a target of the Chinese government. And it's quite funny. At the very early stage of his career, 2001, he was named one of the top 10 lawyers in China, and it was by the Ministry of Justice, and it was broadcast on CCTV nationwide. But soon he was targeted because of work of defending others.
It's been 4 years since you've heard from your father?
Correct.
You were advocating for your father and for others in China. You know what China has done to other people. Why are you doing this?
I would say there are tens of millions of families like mine in China. They are only suffering because they stand up for others, they speak out for others. A lot of them, majority of them, they are going through tremendous suffer only because of what they believe. I think it's not fair. We all share the same rights. I want to address the issue.
Are you carrying on what your father was doing?
I try to. A lot of the times, I think myself, as a firefly, live in this very dark place, and then when there's no light, I believe I can light up a light in myself because I am a firefly. So, in a way, I would say yes, I'm carrying on his legacy.
What was your last conversation with your father? What was the last thing that you recall the conversation you had with your father?
So during our very last conversation, that was 4 years ago, he actually called me and shared a vision that God has shared him. He shared a dream with me. He said he doesn't know what's going to happen, but he dreamed of this little girl knocking on his door. She's about 7 or 8. She's asking him if she could borrow his pen, because he doesn't have a computer. He doesn't know how to type. All his weapon, it's a pen. My dad would say, that's the only thing I have. I can't give it to you. And the little girl says, be patient. After I've done with this pen, I will give it back. And my dad told me, be prepared. He might disappear again. And then just like what he said, he disappeared until today.
Grace, you seem to have a real sense of peace and confidence in what you're doing.
Thank you.
Are you motivated by the same thing that your father was motivated by?
I try to. I try because like every time when I want to keep my silence, I think of our life in China. It wasn't just my dad who were tortured, were under 24-hour surveillance. It was the whole family too. I remember 2005, a ordinary day. At the time, my dad is already at the detention center, but my mom told me my dad was on a business trip. She took me to a local barber shop, and then suddenly a dozen of people who dressed in black, they have like huge cameras with like flashlights nonstop, like this close to our face, and then they kidnapped me and my mom back to our apartment. By the time we get there, our babysitter and my baby brother, they were hiding in the corner. There are countless police officials emptying our apartment, and then they were saying those are all sinful evidence. It's funny, they even took our cooking pan. I don't know what they're gonna do about it, but obviously that's a sinful evidence. So from that day, they prohibited us to go out, and 7 to 8 police officers lived in our 2-bedroom apartment with me and my younger brother. I remember, since we can't go out, I remember my brother cries day and night for formula milk. They wouldn't do anything but document. They have a little notebook. They took 8-hour shift, 3 shifts a day. They have a little notebook, documents everything. What time did my brother cry? Why did he cry? What time did I take shower? How long did I take shower? For those, boring things, but they document as details-oriented. So every time when I think back that time, I think of more family are suffering the same thing. I can't be silenced.
Grace, you're speaking to a room full of men and women who care deeply about this issue of religious freedom. China is really at the top of the list when it comes to those countries that abuse people of all faiths. They are exporting it, as we talked about a few moments ago. What difference does it make? Do you see in China the impact when other countries, other Christians, other people of other faiths speak out? Does that make a difference?
Yes, of course. I think China is so strong. It's because a lot of people are having, or a lot of people are ignorant. I think as more people are focusing on the issue, it will change. It will make a tremendous change.
Well, Grace, I know that you are making a tremendous difference by your courage and carrying on the mantle that your father had, and we thank you for being with us today. And I'm going to ask you as we close our time out, if it's okay if I just pray for you.
Of course. And I'm having a last sentence I want to add. I wish everybody always have hope in their mind and to pray as much as you can, to pray for as many people as you can. Because a lot of people who are in jail, I think the only thing that keeps them alive is someone outside are caring about them, are still praying for them. It's important. We can't forget those people. Even though we don't know those people, they need our faith.
If you would join me, I'm going to pray for Grace and honor her request that we pray for those right now that are being held prisoner, captive, that have lost hope because they think no one cares. Father, we thank you for Grace. I thank you for her courage and her boldness. I thank you that she's picked up the torch of freedom from her father, even if it's just for a short period of time. We pray that he'll be back carrying that torch again. But Father, we pray now for those like Grace's family and what they're enduring in China and elsewhere. That, Lord, that you would communicate to them that they're not alone. That, Lord, that we would take up their calls. We would speak on their behalf. And we would advocate for them. And we would not forget them. They are our brothers and our sisters. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you.
So good to be with you.